throughout this year with the réseau and with the goal to highlight the different career possibilities in the private sector for young researchers. So don't hesitate to follow us on social media. We are on LinkedIn and on Twitter. So we have a daily publication, and also to subscribe to our newsletter to be aware of the different events that we organize. Okay, so let's now come back to the main subject of this webinar on how to pursue a career in research and development. And we know that usually young researchers have many questions about how to be able to access to research and development position in industry. So I'm sure we will have a lot of interesting questions, and we are going to discuss today with our 4 speakers that I'm very pleased to welcome, and I sincerely thank you for being with us today. So I'm pleased to introduce first Virginia Sanchez-Quiles, Principal Scientist at Mnemo Therapeutics, Laurence Goffin, Cluster Head in Neuroinflammation at Lundbeck, François Aubert, Research and Development Engineer and Project Manager at Cousin Surgery, and Fabien Delahaye, Head of Single-Cell Genomics and Precision Oncology at Sanofi. So we will be listening now their presentation, and we will continue after this 4 presentation with questions. So you will be allowed to open your micro and camera to ask. And if you have questions from now, feel free to ask them in the chat. Thank you very much. And I will start with the presentation of Virginia.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'm very happy to be here. I was part of Biotechno's organizer like, I don't know, 4 years ago or something like that. So it's very nice to be now as intervenant. So I don't have any presentation as such. I don't have any support. It will be very quickly. I will first present myself. So I'm Virginia Sanchez. I'm Spanish. I did my PhD in Spain in biochemistry in a lab that was focused on proteomics. So I always liked to play with proteins and particularly with mass spec. So during my PhD, I got in contact for the first time with mass spectrometry. I really liked that, and that's why, well, also during my PhD, I did some stage at the University of Geneva. And for my postdoc, I chose to go to University of Southern Denmark to continue my training in mass spectrometry and in cell signaling. And after that, I came to Paris to work on mass spectrometry in a more how to say, translational frame at the Curie Institute. So after that, I came across with this opportunity at Mnemo Therapeutics, where I'm working currently as a principal scientist. I'm working in the branch of Mnemo Therapeutics in charge of discovery new antigens, and I'm in charge of the mass spectrometry part, so meaning that we are using proteomics and immunopeptidomics to discover new antigens. Voila, so that's my presentation very shortly.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you for your presentation. I will give the talk now to Laurence.
Thank you, Hedja. So we'll just share my screen. Okay, so yes, I'm Laurence Goffin. I'm a Frenchman born in Geneva. So I did the majority of my career in Switzerland. But just before presenting myself, I just wanted to introduce a bit the domain of the step of drug development I focused on, which is the very first step, discovery and preclinical development. So compared to the long time that it would take to launch a drug product, I was just focusing on the very first year where you have lots of targets and you are involved in validating this target for specific indication. And then only after these 5 or 6 years, you can test this new molecule to man, and then it will follow the classical path of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 before submission, approval, and then launch on the market. So it's really the very first steps. So I have only a few slides to show you what it consists of. So target identification. Well, you start from a pathology, and I took as an example rheumatoid arthritis. You start from a morphology, and then you compare normal to rheumatoid joints. So you have a look at the histology. And then at the cellular level, you can think of what cellular signaling is involved in the physiopathology. And this will give you some target that you can focus on. And then at the molecular level, you can have a look of which molecule you would like to target. So I'm talking about target. It's just from the pathology to the target identification. Targets, well, they could be extracellular, intracellular, or nuclear, but there's plenty of different targets outside of the cell and within the cell. And the biggest challenge is to find the right target to cure the right disease. So after identification, you need to validate this target. So target validation will start, like I said, with a proof of mechanism. Here, I took the example of knockout mice that do not express a specific gene. And you will see in the biomarker or in some phosphorylation events how it does affect these mice. This is what we call proof of mechanism, because you see the direct effect in signaling. But then you need a proof of principle to see what is actually the effect at the cellular function or physiopathology. In this example, I just put that compared to wild type, you have a drastic decrease in the cell migration that is supposed to be the cause of the disease. So it looks good. Then you go to proof of concept. So then you have a disease model, and now you look for inflammation or disease biomarker. Here it's finger size compared to the wild type mouse that is in this disease model enlarged. You have a normal mice. So you just show that these targets mitigate what you have induced in this disease model. And this is the last step before going into humans. So actually, target validation is going from the proof of mechanism directly to first in man. So as I said, I focus all my career in these two first steps. And now that I've shared with you the focus of my work, I have just a few slides to say what professional path led me to this specialization. So at first I did 10 years in fundamental research, so basically in an academic institution. So I started with a PhD in biochemistry at University of Geneva, and it was basically on molecular chaperone, so folding of proteins, really biochemistry. And then I spent 2 years postdoctoral fellowship at University of Melbourne, Australia. I was financed by the Swiss Foundation. And there I continue my work on protein folding. So without having a clear view on what disease would be involved in this, it was really fundamental. But then when I came back for the second postdoc at Lundbeck Institute of Cancer Research in Lausanne, so in Switzerland, then I got involved in oncology. So then I started to have some interest for deciphering some physiopathology and looking for drugs that could be of benefit for these people. I spent another 2 years at the hospital in Geneva, and there it's just a step that is the last step before professorship. But actually, I was getting tired of having this academic, I would say, a period that were never going more than 2 years. At the end of this, at the end of this position, I had contract that were 6 years after, 6 months after 6 months. So then I considered, was a big move in my career to look for a pharma company. and I moved to Merck Serono, also in Geneva, Switzerland. And this was a big change in my life. I could say that going to pharma company at that stage was enabling to have all the specialists around and progressing your work efficiently, much more than I was doing at the academic institution. So my very first position was principal scientist. And I was involved in the discovery of preclinical validation of targets for autoimmune disease, specifically inflammatory bowel disease, which is in the intestine. But unfortunately, the company closed down after these 4 years, and I had to move. And it was a chance that the company proposed to some of the people to move to a spin-off of Merck Serono, taking some project that they were not willing to continue. And the three of us founded a small biotech called Calypso Biotech. And there I've worked another 4 years, only progressing what I have developed in Merck Serono, but with a very small biotech. We were three of us. So it was completely different frame, highly interesting. And what we managed to do is to move this target up to phase 1 and to sell this program to a big pharma company. But then we couldn't move forward. So I had to look for another position. And in the meantime, I decided to be exposed a bit to clinical trial, because since I was really focused on the preclinical development, I said, well, the goal of all that is to be tested in clinical trial. So I would like to know at least what it is about. So I started an 8 months diploma in management of clinical trial, also in Geneva, in order to see all the steps of the management of clinical trial, and also, more importantly, the regulatory path that you need to prepare in order to make this different step until the launch. At the end of this year, then I moved to GSK. I was project coordinator. But then what was nice in this time is that I was involved in drug life cycle management. So there's a painkiller, a cream painkiller that is called Voltaren, which is a main product for this company. And they're always trying to optimize the product. So I was just involved in trying to find new additive or new ways to make it better, to keep the product on the market. So it was not pharma, it was more consumer healthcare. And I would say that I didn't like that much that period of my career. And I was really, really willing to go back to pharma. So my comeback to pharma was, again, in a very little startup. We were 8 of us. AB2 Bio, also in Switzerland. I was head of research. So actually they had only one product in one indication. And they asked me, because it was very close to be launched, to look for other indication and to establish the validation of their single product in other indication that could be an expansion of their product after the launch of their first indication. So it was really interesting, because I was back to, it was not actually looking for new targets, it was looking for new indication for one given target. But at some point, it's a little biotech, so they were running out of money, so I had to leave. And this was actually only end of last year, in September, that I left this company, and I made a big move, because I joined Lundbeck in Copenhagen, Denmark. And there I'm having the role of head of a department for the neuroinflammation and neuroimmunology. So I would say that all my career focused on inflammation and immunology, but it's a brand new topic to go to inflammation, to go to neurology. But I'm convinced that, this is an indication that share common pathway, and it's just going across the brain-blood barrier, and then you can have the same signaling pathway to validate. So this is where I am today. I've just started the end of last year, and I'm very happy to have this new role because actually in neurodegenerative disease, this company had a focus on various aspects of the disease, but inflammation is rather new in the field. And well, I've been given the task of finding new target that could be effective for neurodegenerative disease, and I'm very happy to do that since end of last year. So I will stop here and ask if there's any question, or otherwise leave the scene to the next presenter.
Sarah?
Hello. Yes, I have a question for Laurence Goffin. Hello, thank you for your presentation. I would like to know what is in terms of your daily job, what would be the biggest difference between your job in academic and your job right now in private companies? Big
or small pharma. So yes, it was a big move because I was really willing to stay in academic field. But I found that I was a bit isolated. Maybe it's at the University of Geneva where I was working at. But it was like a very isolated department. And in order to get some new ideas, you need to talk, you need to interact with people. And the people I was interacting with were only the one in my department. So it was a very limited opening of mindset. And actually, when I joined Merck Serono, I remember very well the first day I came, I was given a computer, and I've never heard about this IBD disease. And I've been asked, well, find new target. This is a computer, search in the literature, find what could be of relevance, and we'll talk when you have an idea. So I found it was really motivating. These were my best years, and it was difficult, but I would say that I felt that you can really do something because you have all the different how do you say, function around you. You would have specialists in toxicology, specialists in vivo testing, specialists in even clinician, and you can move the target much faster than what you could do at the university. Maybe if you do a career at university more on the fundamental research, it would be completely different. But if you look for drug development, I would definitely see that you need all this interaction to do good work. Okay.
And but your job itself was to find the new targets and all that. This in itself hasn't really changed. It's more like the environment that was better for you, in your opinion.
I didn't get the question, sorry.
I mean, your if I understood properly, what you do now in a daily basis is still research. It's
yes, yeah.
So yes, so it's mainly the environment that changed, not the actual job.
The support. I mean, you're let's say you think of an idea. You say, I think we can do something here. You get some information from other function, and then you create a team. And in the team, you have the various function. So if you have any question, any concern about would it be toxic or whatever, you speak directly to the toxicologist, and he will have an idea because he's dedicated to this project. It's a team. Okay. And then you move. Okay. So it's really to have all these functions on the same project.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Laurence, for your presentation. Very interesting. I don't know if there is another question or no. Otherwise, we can move with the presentation of François.
I just share my screen. It's okay for you?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes, okay, good. So thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to share with you my training and professional course. So rapidly, I've chosen to share with you finally what is my job. And at the beginning, I share with you my training finally. And so I made my bachelor degree in biology at Rennes. And after that, I go to the north of France to did my master degrees, also in biology. And after that, I realized my PhD in biomaterials and more specifically in the medical device. And during my thesis, I work on the antibacterial run dressing design. After my PhD, I go to the University of Cergy to make an ATR job. And finally, to work on the industrial environment and more specifically in medical device, I chosen to follow professional training to be aware and to be focused, concentrated in industrial environment. And that's why I realized professional training in quality management system. And finally, I come back to the north of France at the Cousin surgery as a R&D engineer. So rapidly to introduce Cousin surgery. So we are a manufacturer society based on a very long tradition of innovation, about more than 170 years. And more specifically in the textile, technical textile, applied, for example, in medical device, but we have other industrial or other society, more specifically on other application. And today, about Cousin surgery, it's organized under holding, which regroup Cousin surgery as manufacturer industry. And you can see here three other industry correspond to the distributors in the different visceral field, surgery field, sorry. And you can see some example of product for visceral, obesity, and gynecologic application. And we have also product for spine surgery, for example, to treat scoliosis. So finally, what is the R&D job in industrial field? Firstly, you have the R letter corresponding to the first step, like the design. And you have also the D for industrial phase, industrialization phase, during why we realized the validation for manufacturing of the product in routine conditions. So you have to know that the R&D engineer is fed with different sources, like the market, environment, also by clinical needs and different scientific and technology innovations. And so our job is to finally make a transition between the design phase to the industrialization phase. So all our activities are framed by regulation and international standard. And more specifically, more recently, we have to update our technical file under the new medical device regulation. So about the medtech model, we have four main phases, more detail after. You can see here a basic design model in medtech like Cousin surgery. You can see that from the beginning of the project to the end of the project with the market launch, we need around 6 to 10 years. It is we need a very long time to develop a new project, a new product. So in details, you can see here finally the different steps. From the beginning of the project, when we identify, for example, the unmet clinical needs or the market or competitive product, for example, allow us to make the first proof of concept. And after, you have the building phase, during why we define the input data corresponding to the requirement needs for the future project. And then we have the design phase by definition, during why we define the output data corresponding to the specification of the project. After that, we have the development and validation phase, and during why we work with other departments like the method department, allow us to validate we are able to produce the product according to the final design, and to be sure we are able to produce in routine condition finally the new product. And after that, during this phase, we also validated, for example, biocompatibility or other validations. And after, we have to ask a clinical authorization for clinical investigation, more specifically in the new medical device regulation. And in this phase, we evaluate finally and to confirm the safety of the product and to validate the performance of the new product. So in conclusion, the R&D engineer or project manager have to be sources with different elements. And our job is to transform this element in input data, different requirements, like the clinical context and what finally we want for the future project. And we have to finally bring to the society adding value. For example, like intellectual properties, and also for return of investment, and finally to solve an innovation in the medical device field. So this is not the end, because we have in our activities we have to make post-market surveillance, and according this activity, sometimes the R&D engineer have to, for example, improve the product, and the cycle finally show here is repeated. And like said Laurence, it is important to know that the R&D engineer doesn't work alone, but with the team, composed, for example, like I said, by a method engineer or project manager to identify, for example, the competitive environment or other project. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, François, for your presentation. We have some questions in the chat that it is for Laurence mainly. I will ask them later. Just we will continue with the presentation of Fabien, and I propose you to read this question just after.
Hi, thanks. First, I really want to thank you, because I think this like organizing such a meeting is quite important, and I wish I had that when I was a PhD student or a postdoc, because we didn't have such initiative. I also like the fact that we're good with parity, like it's like half women and half men today, which is not the case in most academia labs or even in industry, even if it's a bit better now. I said I didn't have slide, but I find some of slide just to highlight my path. So I will just share that because I think it would be easier to follow. And I try to be quick because I want you guys to ask question. So I think you see my slide.
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So so I started, I did all my college in Lille, in north of France. And I started really my scientific career with PhD, where I was working on physiology and trying to understand like what we call fetal programming. So how the environment of pregnancy will affect the development of the babies, basically. And at that stage, I was really working with rats and trying to understand how food deprivation was affecting the brain development and linking to obesity. So I did my PhD in 3 years, and then I decided to move to, well, I got this PhD in 2010, sorry, but then I moved to the US first to learn English because I didn't know any word in English at that time. And I thought it was important if you wanted to be a scientist. But also because at that time there was a big boom in genomics and epigenomics. And so I decided to change a little bit of my skills, or at least add some of the skills. But I was also lucky because there is exactly the same area of interest, which is the fetal programming. And so I moved to genomics and specifically epigenomics and work on human cells at that time. So it was a great experience. And so I started a postdoc for 3 years there in the US. And I was supposed to come back to teach at the university, but it was going quite well there and my team was great. So I decided to stay a bit longer. And so I got an assistant professor position at the University of our College of Medicine of Albert Einstein, still in New York, where I really was focusing on functional genomics. So applying those technology to different model and different questions within the school. Then 2 years after that, in parallel to my research, I was asked to become the director of the computational genomics. So here I was working with bioinformaticians. So as I tried to divide my time, like 70% research and 30% of managing this core facility, which was a great experience, truly to know how to really manage people, because you can manage PhD students, you can manage postdoc, but managing bioinformatician or actual, I will tell you later, like when you go to pharma and big company, it's very different tool set that you need to do so. So I was really happy to have that experience. And also because as it was a core, you were exposed to a lot of different subjects. So it helped you to have an open-minded and seek interest in a lot of different questions. Then I wanted to go back to Europe. And so I applied to a position in the Institut Pasteur de Lille, and I get a starting grant for 3 years, which allowed me to build my group. Which was also a great experience, starting from scratch. And what I decided to do there is to keep working on my field of interest, which was the programming, but develop new technology, which was on single-cell omics, and also set up a platform there for single-cell analysis. And so that was also a great experience. Yeah, so I became, well, I just say that. And in 2022, basically, I decided to leave academia to go to industry. And I got a position as a head of single cell in precision oncology at Sanofi. So precision oncology is doing medicine of precision on oncology. So it's a cluster in Sanofi research department, which is within oncology, where we try to apply precision medicine tools to oncology, which is a very fascinating aspect. And as Laurence and François highlighted, it's really a teamwork, and it's also a very great environment, and you're exposed to a lot of different, I will say, not teams, but discipline, where you have chemistry, you have clinician, you have jurists, you have legal, you have a lot of different aspects of a work that you didn't imagine before. So far, it's making a great experience, and I'm happy to answer more questions about it. Because I think it's going to be a question, it was already a question on why leaving academia for industry. From my perspective, it's really because at this stage here, I really feel like it was a dead end. You know, you have few possibilities if you want stable job. It's either you get a concours, which I tried several times, or you just have like 6 months contract that renew or not renew. And that was not the way I wanted science to be performed. I wanted to have some visibility in what I'm doing. And if you want to be bringing something ready to the table, that you need to have time to do so. And why I mentioned that also is, I mean, I decided to put a straight line here, but really it's not very a straight forward path. And that's also something that you have to consider when you want to apply for a CR position, at least in France. They have a very specific model that they want you to follow. And even if I have no proof, I strongly believe that if you don't match into that model, it's very unlikely that you will get a position, except if you are like the best of the best, which I'm sure some of you are. But I want to say, like, thinking of every step will have an impact on your next move. It's not a bad thing. You just have to try to keep consistent on what you want. I know for me, the priority was not to get to see a position. The priority was to be in a position where I can do what I want to do and bring what I want to bring on the table. So it was not an issue. As far as I stay in the US and started to split my activity, I knew my profile will be a bit specific and more industry than academia. But it's some move that you have, or like something that you have to think when you make your move. And I will stop here because I want you to be able to ask questions, and I want everybody on the panel to be able to answer. So thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Fabien, for your presentation. And you started already to answer some questions, so we can move to the first question that is actually for Laurence, but may concern also other speakers. So what do you think about going in industry right after the PhD, and what kind of position can we get?
So actually, it was the case when I was at Neuroinflammation, because we hosted some master students, and I've been asked by this master student whether it would be a good idea to do a PhD and then directly come back to Neuroinflammation or to another industry. And this is what they've done for two of them. So actually, if you feel that the environment of a big pharma, or at least a pharma company, is the way you would like to continue your research, I think as long as you want to do drug development, it would be the easiest for what I believe. If you want to do, this is my personal view, if you want to do fundamental research, I would say that you would have a better life, I would say, in the academic environment. But really, if you want to make things happen, as was just said before, you will have the tool, you will have the budget, you will have the support, and this is the place to be if you want to make things happen. So going after a PhD directly to the pharma industry, yes, it would be a good idea if this is the career you want to pursue.
So if I may add some things, because actually there was a forum a couple of months ago where you can go and discuss to different industry, and I was there for Sanofi, so I have many of those questions already. But I agree, like there is no, like, I think in my perspective there is a big shift right now in pharma and in big pharma that they want to hire many PhD, so they're actually really looking toward that, and higher position are only open to PhD, basically. So going directly after your PhD is totally fine, as Laurence said, if you want to do like a very more driven project. I still see that there is, like, in a very early phase of development, as Laurence showed, that like we call here pre-M0, we have many labs that still do very, very fundamental research. Like, it's still something. It's targeted to a specific molecule, to a specific target, but it's really fundamental research. So this is really, I don't think like you should be concerned about that. As a personal opinion, I think postdoc is a great opportunity to learn new things, to be independent, most of the time to travel somewhere. So I will highly recommend, if you are ready to do that move, to do a postdoc, because it's not gonna like be bad, or it's only gonna bring you some new stuff. So if you have the choice, I will highly suggest you to do a postdoc and then come back. But from the industry part, I don't think it really matters.
Thank you.
And jump in. So to answer the last question, what kind of position can we get? We actually in Mnemo, we have people that are coming straight away from the PhD. If that is what you, what you want to do, that's completely fine. And we have some people right after the PhD and they are in scientist positions. So if this is what you want to do, just follow it. So, I mean, it's completely doable.
And if I may, just very, I'm not in mute now. Just like the only thing is you have to know what you want, sorry, and sell yourself. Like I know, like as an academist and PhD people, and I am going to highlight French PhD people, we are terrible at selling ourselves. But if you know what you want and you know where you want to get in industry, you can get the position that you want, which is not going to be the case in academia because you have to follow all of this. But like if you see a fit, they make the decision. So tell them that you're the best choice and you will have the position. I'm not saying you're going to be a CEO or head of some things, but because it has to match, but you will definitely get a position that match your experience. So just learn to sell yourself and know that when you do a PhD, you bring a lot into industry because there is many things that we know how to do that they are craving for.
Thank you, Fabien. François, do you want to add something?
About this question, yeah, just a rapid answer. I agree with Fabien that you have to know what you want, and about a postdoc or directly go to industry or private industry. I think you have to choose and possibly also you have to imagine if you need to make like me other professional training. This is my personal view, but in the past I imagine that the PhD is not finally the alone training possibility. And during my training in the quality management system, I really learned many things about the approach, about the quality control, and it is for me very important to imagine work on, for example, at Cousin surgery. Yeah.
Thank you, François. So we have a question that is close to the first one. So it is, was it hard to find a job in industry with your academic profile, Laurence, especially after 6 years of a postdoc?
You need to be motivated. I mean, it was a big decision because I was really willing to stay at academia. But then when I had this, it was 8 hours interview, just to tell you. When I had this interview, I felt that it was kind of a family, and they were willing to get the best people in the team. And when I say best, I would say the more motivated people. And what gave me the more confidence is when I was chosen, I've been told by the head of the department, don't worry, since you're coming from academia, we think that it's going to take you 2 years before being productive. So it's just tell you that it's a big move, but they know it's a big move, and they will just let you time to get adapted, to get the way of working in these companies. And if you are motivated and if they are supporting you, even if it takes 1 or 2 years, you'll make it. So yes, it's just a question of motivation.
They gave me 6 months, not 2 years. No, I mean, I'm not.
Difference between US and Switzerland, maybe.
Yes.
But sorry, just in my experience, it also depends on the configuration, the existing configuration, as you were saying, Laurence. because maybe the people that were already in the company when you arrived directly from academia already had experience in the private sector. On the other hand, if you are coming to a group that is already very strong on the academia or on the academic part, then maybe they are more willing to look for somebody that has already experience in biotech or pharma, whatever. So it really depends on who you are dealing with. But it can very well be, that it's okay, completely okay that you are academic, too academic.
I think also like, I mean, maybe that's specific to Sanofi, but I also want to emphasize that even if you still do research, even if the skill that you will need are a bit different from academia to industry. Like there is a strong needs for project leaders, like you lead projects in a different way. So you have to communicate, you have to like be able to really communicate very well in various supports. And this is really a key, I think, in what I have seen and I've seen in hiring process. It's a key skills to have if you want to go in a position or a higher position in industry, because that will really make the difference. And that's something that it's not always easy to develop when you're in PhD or like in academia, because you're always working for someone. And that's also why the postdoc may be a good opportunity, because you're supposed to switch into something where you're more leading to. But I think that's, if you want to really interest industry, that aspect has to show off on your path, regardless of you have a PhD and how much postdoc you have PhD students that have a lot of opportunity to show off. That's something that you may want to highlight as well, because I think that's something that you should be aware of. And another thing is like we also have more and more collaboration with academic, and so they also need these profiles to fill the gap between industry and academy. So I do really think it's a good time for academic to switch into industry, at least in Sanofi, where we are trying to develop a lot of those collaboration. But I'm sure it's true in many, like we need those. So yeah.
Thank you, Fabien. So we have a next question about your job research. And actually the question is, did you find your industry job through open job offers or through spontaneous application? And also another one that is very close is, do your companies actually hire through LinkedIn, or do they use other platforms?
I don't know.
I was applying to a job offer, so on LinkedIn. And on my site for Mnemo, sorry, we have both LinkedIn and also consultants for recruitment. Because, for example, there are some skills that are easier to find. In the case of mass spectrometry, is rather rare skill. So for that, for example, we used consultants for hiring, but usually we post on LinkedIn. So.
And for me, it's none of the two proposition. It's my network, my professional network, allow me to obtain my job today. And I want to add, it's one point, a complementary point, but you have really take into account your network, your professional network to communicate, like said Fabien, that you have to use the various way of communication to justify and explain you want to find a job, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is a great tool. Many people communicate on it, and like you can, and it's always communicated. It's like reach out to people. Like if you want to go somewhere, reach out to people. There's many positions that are not communicated or not communicated like instantly. So if they know that people are interested, they will keep you posted and stuff. So don't be shy, reach out to people, but reach out to people if you have an idea of what you want, and not reach out to people just like I've seen it, like people just stop by and ask you random question. This is not going to help. Like if you reach out to people, reach out with a specific project and something that you want to offer, and not like dig into what they have to offer, because that's what I will do. But yeah.
A question from Mehdi Jeloul. Mehdi, can you hear us? Okay, maybe later. So, next question was for François.
There are many questions.
François, do you think that experience of being a CSV engineer in consulting companies can contribute to build a career in research and development?
Yes, I don't understand really the question. Yeah. Yes, that I said, for my personal choice, I want to follow an additional training, professional training, to be, I don't know the word, but to have an adding value, like I said, for potential hiring or job position. And is that I said before, you have to know that you want, if you want to work on pharmaceutical or medical device or other industrial, like R&D engineer, according this specific field, you have to potentially, you have to follow complementary training. Yeah, it's my personal view. Yeah.
Thank you, François. So we have also a master student present with us, and one of them is asking, what would you recommend to a master student that does not want to do a PhD and prefer to go industry right away? So is it the same as a postdoc or no?
I mean, he can go. He will have a position for a master, like student in the industry. Like yeah. I mean, we have non-PhD in the lab, in the team, so that's definitely a solution.
Sorry, this is Mehdi speaking. I was on mute, so I couldn't ask my question. Can you hear me all? Yeah, thank you very much. This is a very interesting talk. I've been listening carefully to all the speakers, and I have one question. So two questions. The first one is to the person working at Lundbeck. So that it's great background, and congratulations for the new position. So would you have the feeling that this kind of career would be a cycle of 2 years, 3 years, and then one should think of moving on? Because this is somehow the pattern that your career path had been looking like, and I share more or less the same pattern. So that's why I would like to have your opinion on that. So that was my first question, and the second question is also for the the person working at Sanofi, because I've been doing my postdoc at Sanofi 2 years ago, and but it's something that could be general. There are many reorganizations. I was at the site of Chili Mazarin that closed down, that is closing down. Aren't you somehow concerned about the cycles also of reorganizations in the big pharma that could also be something harmful for scientists' career development?
Okay, so if I can just start with your first question. Actually, I didn't choose to move that often. It was after the PhD. Well, the postdoc 2 years was normal, and when I started to have these 2 other postdoc, I was really willing to stay, and I made the choice to go in certain lab in order to obtain a fixed position. It wasn't possible. So then I moved to pharma, and then I didn't have the choice. I mean, one after the other, there was a fusion, closure, lack of money for little biotech. So my 2 or 3 years turnover is only linked to the survival of my job. But then I realized that actually this is probably the situation that the new students are going to face. And I think you need to be prepared and to take the opportunity of having a career path that is as various as possible. And it's not anymore the case that you stay 20 years in the same place. So if you need to move, then you need to think what can the next job will bring you and will add to your career. And in one single sentence, I can tell you that every single job I obtained was due to the previous one. The previous one gave me the opportunity to have the next one, etc., etc. So you just build something that is very important. And I would not be afraid of moving, even if, as me, you are forced to move.
So I guess I'm gonna follow up because it's a quite similar question. Because like small company closing or big company closing some or reorganizing their research efforts. I am fully aware of the Chili Mazarin closing. It was right before I arrived, and we have like every 6 months. Like questioning about the strategy and stuff, so you may have to change your priorities. So again, like I said, Laurence, it's a personal choice. I am not aware, I'm not afraid of it, but it's also because I have the freedom to move if I need to move, and I have the freedom to leave the company if I want to leave the company. So the real question is like, if you want a job just to be in a company, then that's a different question. I want a job that allows me to do what I want to do, and I use my skills and my experience to always see the next step. That doesn't mean that I want to stay longer in where I am, because that's what I want. But if I can do what I want to do in where I am, I will look for something else. So if tomorrow Sanofi changes strategy and tell me that you cannot do genomics anymore, then I will say, okay, fine, I will do genomics somewhere else, because that's how I want to be with my job. If the genomics is not what is the key point of my career, then I will stay in Sanofi and do something else, because I see all the other benefit of being in Sanofi, So it's really what drives you. For me, I have made it clear from the beginning that what drives me is the science and what I am doing with the science. And that may evolve, with time, but right now it's that. So I will make decision based on that. And truly, like, every experience is good. And something that also what I observe when starting to look outside of academia is that there is many options. It's not all option where you are. It's not all option but there's many options. Even without leaving France, I was very surprised. And more outside of Paris, there is a lot, like Lille has a lot of biotech. And so if you are a little bit flexible, which I think we should all be now, then what you will just jump on another opportunity. And I think that's really the key. And you may also want to do it even if they don't close, just because you need to learn something else. As François was saying, you need to have new tool in your toolbox. So either you go that through your job, or you do that through the university, or you do that through your experience. And I think that's really what should be the key question. It's really a life work balance that you want to have, I guess, and how you see work in your life.
Thank you, Fabien. Thank you. So we have a next question. So for participants, if you want to open your micro and camera, don't hesitate to ask your question directly. So next question is, have you ever considered to return into academic position and why, after all this career path?
So for me, the answer will be very quick. I can't, because in academia, you need to publish. And in the industry, this is not the major focus. So if you want to find a position in academia, you need to have a record of publication that is pretty impressive, especially at my age, and it will not be possible. So this is a move that you need to make at some point. You can change after, let's say, 2 years in the industry. You do not have that much delay, but after 14 years like me, no way.
Yeah, I mean, I just moved, so I keep it in the side. But truly, like, even if it sounds sexy or like yeah, academia is nice, like you have a lot of advantages in industry. And truly, if I have to look objectively at academia now, it's really getting closer and closer of what we're doing in industry, because like they have to have a very targeted approach. They have to, like, there is few labs that really do fundamental work for doing fundamental work. That's my opinion. And so if you have to write a proposal, INR and stuff are very driven now. So you have to have application. So basically it's trying to do what industry does with way less financing and in a different environment. But yes, I keep it open. One thing is that I agree, you need to publish. And so if you want that opportunity, you should be trying to publish and keep publishing. So this is where collaboration is good. We also are encouraged to publish, at least in Sanofi. It's not as easy in academia because obviously it's way more targeted, but also the network is very important. Like, if you want to have still a foot in academia, keep in touch with all your people that you are working with in academia, because if they don't get you back, you will not be able to be back, because if you're not fitted to any kind of concours or stuff. So yeah.
Thank you. I think we have a question from Mohamed, who raised his hand.
Yes, first of all, thank you all for your presentation. The question was asked previously, but I want, if it's possible, an answer that's tailored to my case. So I am now a Master 2 student. I'm doing my internship, but previously I don't have a bachelor in biology. Actually, I previously I have a medical degree in general medicine. So I wanted to know if you know about people in the industry that come from a medical background and have is a medical diploma and a master's degree enough, or is it better to pursue with a PhD and then possibly a career in research and development?
Are you MD with a master? I didn't get that.
So I have a medical degree from Algeria, and then after that, because I wanted to do research, I did a Master 1 degree in Paris-Saclay University, and now I'm doing Master 2 in genetics, genomics, and epigenetics, where I do part biology and part bioinformatics. So now I'm doing my internship. I will finish my Master 2 like very soon, and I wanted to know if if you know about people who have this background and work in research and development, or is it not something very common, if it's possible?
I don't have personal experience with that. As we said before, like it's really like you can enter industry at any level, so it will depend of what position you are aiming for. Also keep in mind that at least like you will be able to be trained to get promoted and stuff in industry. Like in industry, they have the obligation to do so. But clearly, like I know, like for Sanofi, like to be scientist and above, you will need a PhD. So then whatever, or something that is similar to a PhD. So then again, if you want something, go ask, and they will tell you where you fit into the organization. But yeah, I don't have a concrete example or a case to tell you, yeah, you can or you cannot. But I'm tempted to then tell you that you can and see, like, but it depends on what you're aiming for.
Thank you. If I can just say, if you're aiming at doing some drug development, having a basis as a MD is a big chance, because they're definitely looking for people having this approach. And sometimes I was blocked in my progression because I didn't have an MD. I mean, they were looking for PhD MD. So I mean, they're adding on top of it. So I think I would not be that strict on the fact that you need a PhD. After a master, you could probably present your profile to the industry. Your medical degree will be really welcomed. But then, as it was said, if you want to go higher, you'll need to have a PhD at some point.
Okay.
And you have, I just want to add something. You have to be conscious that job position depend also about the trends, and actually I think there are many position, for example, into the regulation, and also in the quality control, for example. But if you be interested by this subject, you can imagine also a little deviation, or I don't know, yeah, if you understand, but you have to be conscious about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I have a question from Angèle.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, thank you very much for your presentation. I have a bit of a general question, because I am a Master 1 student in chemistry minoring biology. I would really love to work in research and development, in drug development. And I'm wondering if I should do a PhD. I'm not sure if I know that I don't want to do like a postdoc. So I was wondering if accessing such job would be possible, and if so, how? I'm not sure my question is clear. I'm sorry. If I were to rephrase, do I need, as a master, as I have a master's, as I would have a master in chemistry, do I need to do a PhD in order to work in drug development in R&D?
So as we said, it's just a question of what position you're aiming at. If you would have definitely a role in the industry, in the pharma industry with your master, because you're 5 years after 5 years of formation, and you will find a job. Now, if you want to move towards a more managerial position, like group leader or head of a department even, then you would need a PhD. So it all depends to what you are aiming at. But if you want just to contribute to drug development and make some science, some research, with a master you can. If you want to have a group, to be a manager of a team, then you most likely would need to have a PhD. This is my opinion.
Can I follow up?
Did you understand?
Yes, I understood.
Okay.
Just to be clear, does to be able to level up in R&D drug development, would you also need a postdoc?
I mean, it all depends what you want to do, because postdoc, it's a great opportunity to have 2 years abroad, and you have an extra field that you can discover before going to the industry. So it's a chance after a PhD to do a postdoc, and if you have the opportunity, I would really encourage you to do so. But I mean, PhD and postdoc are going together. The big decision is stopping after a master or going to a PhD.
And I think, like, I would like to encourage you to think of postdoc is an experience. It's a work experience. So like if you do a postdoc, or if you go to work for 2 years of an industry, that's gonna, for the next step, gonna basically weight the same. You know, it's really like, but I do believe that postdoc bring you over stuff that you will not get from just getting to an industry job right away. So it's, yeah, it's just experience and skills. Like, it's like Laurence said, like every time she used their experience to get the next job, and here is really the same things. Where do you start? If you start with a master, you get there. If you start with a PhD, you had a new experience. If you start with a postdoc, you had a new experience, and it's really a personal choice.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a next question. I'm not sure that we will be able to answer, but let's try. How competitive is French research and development market for non-European nationals financing their PhD in France? And how important is fluency in French language? So I don't know if the question is clear.
So I can answer, at least for Sanofi. It doesn't matter. Like it's really open. Of course, if you need visa to work and stuff, it will be taken into account when you need to have an offer or something like this, because it's something that they have to take for account. Sanofi, being a French company, they ask you to show some willingness to learn French, but like we are split between US and France, so anyhow our meetings are in English, everything is in English, so it's more for you to be comfortable to evolve in a French environment than as a job really requirement. And I do believe that is not we cannot anymore require people to speak French, right? So this is, yeah, this is not the issue. However, you have to show some interest in working in France. So like, but that's for everyone that we're going to apply to that.
Well, in Mnemo, we are not really limited by French. I mean, I have people in my team that do not speak French. I am not French. And actually, we never did the proportions of our nationalities, but actually there's a lot of people in the Paris side that are not French, and that's completely fine. And we communicate in English, also in French, of course, but at least in my environment, it's not a problem at all.
Thank you. Next question is, are you satisfied with your work-life balance in your current jobs?
Well, I'm good.
Yes. Let's go back.
I don't think it can be worse than in academia. So
I would say it's not the same stress. I mean, it's completely different. In academia, you're running for grant because if you do not have result, you do not have grant. If you do not have grant, you cannot make experiments, so you cannot have results. So it's like you're dead in 1 or 2 years if you do not enter this loop. So academia, the stress is mainly to get result, to get grants. For the industry, you have money, but you need to prove that you can get money from your manager. And so you need to have your project running, and you need to be constantly fitting with timelines. You have deadlines all the year long, and you need to fit to these deadlines because it's much more stringent in terms of fitting to the timelines. So I would say it's just a mindset. You need to fit with the way of thinking of the pharma company. But I mean, if after half a year you feel that you can do it, I mean, it's for me, it's not a big stress. It's just understanding what's the need to fit the timelines, and then it's easy to do it. It's not that big.
Yes, I think in academia research, you have many ideas, but you have to find money. And in industry, R&D industry or medtech, you have a project and you have to justify why you need money for that. It's the little difference between these two fields for me.
And I think like if you really work on like term of like work on life balance and hours and stuff, like really it's personal. What I like, and as we mentioned, it's more teamwork when you're in industry. So like when you're in academia, I really feel like you are the one driving everything. If you stop working, projects stop. In industry, it's gonna keep going. So either you are on board or you're not, and that's gonna be an issue. But like the project is going, like you have many people, and what I like, and maybe it's because I don't have like always great experience in academia, is that the rules are fixed in industry. Like you have an HR department, like everybody follow the rules, and the rules are not depending on who is your N+1, which in academia is highly depending of who is your PI, basically. In industry, there's rules, and so you can feel a bit better on managing your own time than in academia. At least that's how I feel it. Like and if there is someone breaking the rules, there is consequences, which is not always the case in academia. Like you really are just more like it's a personal relationship there. But that's my impression. But yeah, I'm happy.
Thank you. So in the same way, someone is asking what are other big differences in between academia and research and development, for example, in terms of contract type or salary.
Okay, contract type, as we were saying, it was already mentioned before. On my side, it was the same. The last contracts that I had in academia, they were for a few months, and then few months, and this is not something that I can bear anymore. And obviously the salary is bigger in private sector. So looking at that side, it's better in the private sector, but depending on what you want to do, you may have a super good contract and super good salary, and you don't like what you do, then.
And don't forget that even if you have a how do you call CDI, I mean, not fixed contract, everything can stop.
Yeah.
With a fusion or with something in the company. When I entered Merck Serono, it has been the first time that I've signed a not fixed term contract, and I was so happy. And 4 years later, it closed down. So,
yeah.
I guess for me, the only difference is that there is opportunity. That I feel like in academia, there is less and less opportunity. So it's not even that like there's no job. It's like if you want job, there is less and less. I mean, like a long-term job. Like it's either a CR position where it's like nothing every year, or like à terre, like, which is like the worst terrible like position that you can have. So for me, I totally agree that it's not because you have that it's going to last, but at least you can have it. And of course, yeah, money is better, but it should not be your, I mean, at least it should not be your first rationale for that, I guess. But that's my opinion.
I'm sorry, Ajay, I have to leave, and I just send a message for all if they want to send me directly their question, and I take the time to respond. Yeah.
Thank you, François. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. I don't know if there are other people who wants to open their micro. I look for other questions.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Hello, I am Brahma. I am pharmacist, and I am actually pursuing a master degree on innovative therapies, on cell therapy, on DMD, and many researching and trending fields. But like I have an internship in medical devices. It's in imaging and preclinical studies. But like my interest is mainly in extracellular vesicles and cell therapy. I don't know if I should should look for a PhD in these fields, or should I stick with what I am taking now as an internship? Like, what are the chances for me to get PhD financing or PhD position for something that I didn't have an internship in it, and that I only know some theoretic basic about it? Hello? Did you guess?
Yeah, I mean, but it's again, I think that you should be asking yourself the question of what you want to do. Like, as we say, like there is every job in industry, and here we own, like, now we are three with different company, but there is many company that's gonna look for many skills and many, so it's really a matter of what is important to you. Like
no, it's not like I am interested in extracellular vesicles, for example, but I didn't find an internship on it. I found an internship on medical devices, but I would love to pursue a PhD on extracellular vesicles. I'm talking about opportunities that I would take. Like, is it like with the industries or with the academic centers or as research institutes accept a PhD position for something that I didn't have an internship on it? Like, should I do?
That's like, if you talk about PhD, and if you talk about PhD with industry, that means it's a CIFRE. It's a collaboration between academia and the industry. Academia and industry work on the project, and then the project is open for candidate to apply. So then you apply to the candidate, to the proposal, sorry, and then if you fit to what is needed for the project, you will be selected. But like it's not the academia deciding like who is getting which PhD. It's actually it's a combined process. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I kinda. Thank you.
Thank you, Brahma. One more question from Sevde.
Hello, everyone. So my question is related regarding to French job market. I would like to say something. So since 1 year, I'm doing a research, like job research, and I figure out that French market was more focused on the clinical research. So most of the job positions are clinical research rather than the R&D. So of course there is R&D, but it's too competitive what I see compared to the job positions in Switzerland and Germany. So my question is regarding first, what do you think about the French job markets nowadays? I don't know if you know still. And second is that if the doing postdoc, for example, in clinical research in hospital, or I don't know, some part of academia can contribute to find a job in industry. Thank you.
Yes, I think this question is highly relevant because at some point I did this diploma of management of clinical trial because I was facing exactly the same situation you're describing. I saw that 70% of the position were for clinical trial manager. And I was in preclinical and I have no clue of what it would be to be a clinical manager. So I did this training in order to have some experience. But then the first job I had after that, I was a bit in contact with clinical trial, but I found it was so complex word that I would say that you need more than just a diploma. You need to enter this clinical trial manager step, like your assistant, associate, etc. And if you manage to get some training, not training, but some first job in the clinical trial management, then you will have a strong profile, I would say, on the market, because yes, this is highly on demand.
I also think that, and maybe I didn't understood well your question, but I feel like you have to choose a path that match with what you want to do and not what the job market is telling you to do, because if not, I don't think it will last, as just Laurence said.
My question was, I mean, in the beginning, I was searching the jobs in the research and development, and then so I did a biochemistry PhD too, and then I couldn't find a long time, so I started to search that what the PhDs can do in French market. So I applied for example, medical science liaison and these clinical research applications. But what I'm saying is that PhD profile does not match directly to this clinical research job requirements. So I was thinking to do postdoc in the hospital with the MD PhD doctors to use that clinical research to enter the industry. So actually, my question is like, do you find the French market is the same? There's a really limited R&D positions nowadays. I don't know how was it for you, but I'm really struggling to transit myself from academia to the industry as a graduated PhD. So that's, yeah. I mean, there's still not clear question, but open question. It's just yeah.
Go ahead, Fabien.
No, I was gonna say, but I don't think it's gonna, like, at least in Sanofi, like I think in January we hire 60 people that are R&D and that actually research, because R&D are different, research and development. Like at least in Sanofi we have research and we have development people. So in research, like we hire 60 people and they were not clinical, like so there is some job. Maybe I'm looking in a very like a narrow way here or focused way. There is some job. Then they may not fit what you want or what you have as a path. And then if you have an opportunity to get new skills, so doing a postdoc in a clinical environment on a clinical project may give you, as Laurence was saying, the skill that you need to get to that level, then why not? But the question is like, also like, is there more postdoc on that?
No, it's so exceptional. It was really exceptional postdoc, so there is not much postdoc on it. But the thing is, The problem is that as a PhD, when you know the new techniques, unfortunately, these big pharma industries like Sanofi, Merck, and Eurofund, etc., you are not really attractive for them, because it's not like we can learn a technique from you. They want like at least 90% of job requirements match with you, which is mostly on immune disease and immunology and etc. So there's lots of PhDs that they do different search, not immunology, but unfortunately I found that the market is like too limited as a research, either antibody drug conjugates or immune disease. Actually, I'm surprised that by your research subject in the Sanofi also, that it's the first time I heard.
Well, and what I'm going to say is that, you know, like I am working in oncology. I have never worked in oncology before. I still got the job because I put some skill that they needed that was not oncology related to get the position. And I think that's also something that you have to consider, is like not seeing what you don't have, but seeing what you have and put that in a format or in a shape that they will be interested in. Even if I can learn, I have training to, I mean, I've done some oncology, but that was not the focus of my research for 10 years. And so this, like, I think, like, as we all say, like, you have to be confident on what you can bring and tell them what you can bring on the table. And I'm not saying like if they want someone very specific on a area, they will take you, but you have to learn how to put all your skill and make them fit what they want, and not trying to like do the other way around. Like you have many skills that can be useful for them, and we all write position, and we all want like everything in that position, but we all know that we will not get someone that have all the requirements. So then it became to, what is the person that have the thing that we actually need? How we are the interaction with this person? At the end, it's a people-to-people conversation. So you just have to get to that level. And so you have to put your experience into a way that they will want to talk to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabien. I think we are at the end of this webinar. I'm sorry there are so many questions. I tried to ask many of them. So don't, I think, hesitate maybe to contact us if you have other questions. Réseau Biotechno on social media. I would like to thank the speakers, of course, Fabien, François, Laurence, and Virginia for their availability and sharing their experience and for answering the question. I'm delighted that so many of you attended this event, and I thank you for your participation. And also, I would like to thank all the organizers in Réseau Biotechno and especially the webinar team. Thank you very much. And hope to see you in other webinars.
And I wish you all the best.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was super nice.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.